We're in Matthew chapter 2.
Now, I've lost my Bible.
There you go.
About to get another Bible. So we're not reading the same type of Bible now.
That's okay.
Okay, Matthew 2. I can tell you that I read it a number of times, but I didn't do any research. Actually, I did do a little bit of research. I did research about the star.
Excellent. Where did you read from? What did you consult?
Well, I just did some searching on the internet for some scholarly articles about the star. I think 7 BC there was a Jupiter and Saturn came together.
Yep.
So that could potentially, yeah. Say if Jesus was born in 5 BC, then 7 BC might have given them a couple of years to get their act together and make the trip.
Yep.
But it doesn't explain the star then that Matthew says appears over the house, and so they know which house to go to.
Okay. You want to rush? I've lost my breath.
I'll read it. I'll read it, but we've got to read it in NIV, sorry.
Okay.
So this is chapter 2, verse 1. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod. Maggie, how do you say it? Magi?
Magi, I think.
Magi.
Yep.
Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will be shepherd of my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go, make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Should we just leave it there for the moment?
Okay. And the passage that we were wondering about is where in verse 9, they set out at the king's bidding, and the star which they had seen at its rising went ahead of them until it stopped above the place where the child lay. At the sight of the star, they were overjoyed. Now, there's a clue there, I think. It doesn't seem to me that the star went ahead of them from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. It didn't need to, because they were told they had to go to Bethlehem. And in the NIB, it says, New English Bible, NEB, it says, the star which they had seen at its rising went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child lay. It seems to me that they identified this star that kind of appeared over the house, the place where the child lay, that it was a surprise and a delight to them that it appeared over the house in Bethlehem when they got there. So
But where were
this
they
star,
standing? It only works if you're standing in the right place, doesn't it?
uh,
They'd be
don't think
coming,
of it
they'd have
as
to be coming from Jerusalem down to Bethlehem. They get to Bethlehem and then the star rises. They've got to be standing in the right place to see the star rise to know where the house is. Anyway, sorry, you keep
what
going.
I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that the star that they saw 2 years before,
Yes.
when they set out from Babylon or Media or Persia or wherever they came from, the star that they saw there was the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, as you say. The star that was over the house was a supernatural appearance of a light that was like directly above the house and just above the roof. That it wasn't way up in the sky. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Should we go back to the other star first for a minute?
Okay.
Have,
Yep.
have you read the same kind of stuff about the star? And
I've
did that
read
star appear in the east? Did the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in 7 BC happen in the eastern sky?
yes, according to astronomers, it showed 7 times. I watched it happen a few years ago. Now there was a conjunction. It was 3 stars: Jupiter, Saturn, and I can't remember which other one was. And they're planets circling the Earth, circling the sun like the Earth is,
Yeah.
and they were very, very close. And then they came together, and then they separated on different nights, and then
Yeah.
they came back together again. Uh, and yeah, it was what was I trying to say? Yeah, the conjunction was very, very a bright light. Strange that you looked into the sky and you couldn't fail but to see this and wonder what was going on.
Yeah.
So uh, I looked up Ethelbert
Stauffer.
um,
Stauffer.
Stauffer. Yeah, boy, he's a good scholar. Uh, yeah, but anyway, he said that Saturn in their kind of astrology represented Israel, and Jupiter, of course, is uh, the ruler of the gods,
So the
the
king.
Pater, father, Zeus, the father of the gods.
Yeah.
And so putting that together, it seemed all right. So out of Israel, there's going to be born this great leader, this king, and
Yep.
can't help but think about those guys. They they really believed what they. I mean, yeah, it wasn't just a make-up thing like most astrology is today, but they really did believe that the order of the planets as they changed positions against the backdrop of the stars, that uh, somehow or other the heavens represented at night represented the order of the universe. And while things just went, uh, the position of the planets, of course, changed. But when something unusual happened, like a conjunction, well, it just made sense. If the stars represent the order of the universe, which is under the control of the gods, then something unusual means that the gods have got something special to happen on Earth.
Mm.
And putting it all together, what an effort it was to plan I mean, I don't suppose it was all that very far. We just have hopped on a bus or got in the car and driven there. But in those days, it was a big thing to make a journey like that. So, yeah, hats off to them. I think they were sincere. I think they were astute. And I think they were committed to follow through to find out what the gods were doing. And they were generous. I mean, to take gifts like they took, um, they really believed it, because the gifts that they took represent, well, gold and frankincense and myrrh. The gold, of course, kind of fitting for a king. The frankincense is what they would have used in their role as priests. The Magi were kind of like, probably from Zoroastrianism, but they were kind of like the Levites in Israel. They had to be present whenever there was a sacrifice, and they were looked upon as wise and able to interpret dreams and look into the future, and had a serious role. They were teachers to kings and advisors. So, yeah, it doesn't seem much to us. I mean, it's a child's story, and you draw pictures on cards and send them at Christmas time. Although to notice that the Jesus was a child, not a baby, and he was in a house, not in a stable cave. And there are so many differences. And like you said, they'd seen the star, the conjunction, 2 years before. So this in 7 BC. So this was 5 BC, and or no, yeah, 5 BC, and the boy was 2 years old as at the time. So, yeah.
So you think Jesus was probably born in 7 BC?
Beg your pardon?
Do you think Jesus was probably born in 7 BC?
Oh, definitely. No question. Uh, uh, Herod died in 4 BC, and they had to escape, remember, and made their way to Egypt.
Yep.
Just immediately after the Magi had come. Yep. And so, yeah, Jesus must have been born before 4 BC, and this narrows the date down, I think, to 5 BC, which has ramifications, of course, because we usually take it, I think, when it's Luke, isn't it, that says he was about 30 years old. Well, in actual fact, he was 35 years old when he began his ministry, and that would have made him 38 or 39 when he was crucified. So,
why else 7 BC? You think 7 BC because of the star? The conjunction,
yes.
Saturn and Jupiter?
Well, the star and the death of Herod. And Herod was alive 2 years after the appearance of the conjunction. Had to be, because that's when he sent the troops out to slaughter the babies.
Do we have any date? We don't have any date for that, do we?
No.
So the only fixed dates that we have that we can sort of look at and try to verify is the star and the death of Herod. So we've got 7 BC and 4 BC.
Yes.
And we're just assuming that it would probably take them a year or two to get from when the star appeared to get their act together to come and visit the child.
Yes. Well, they said to Herod that the star had appeared 2 years before they got there. Yeah. So, and they got there before Herod died, which is quite likely the year before.
Yep. So that would be
Could well
fine.
be, more likely to be. So that settles it at 5 BC to me.
Yep. Okay.
Ah,
So that's good. So just to clarify again, have you still got a copy of that book by Ethelbert Stauffer?
I do have. It's worth about $1 million. Not really, but yeah, one of my valued books.
I used to have a photocopy of it somewhere from when we
Oh,
were in. Yeah.
well, the way I'm feeling this last week, I'm not going to be needing that book any longer. So I'll bequeath it to you if you wish.
Well, I'll give you some time to think more carefully about that.
No. I mean, I got, what did I count one time? Can't remember. Thousands of books around the place. So,
Yeah.
hey, there's another book too, just while I'm talking about it, by Ethelbert Stauffer. It's called Theology of the New Testament. And that one's even rarer. And there's another book that goes with it, Jerusalem between Herod and the Caesars, or something like that, which is it's got all kinds of quotations in it. And the book on New Testament, theology of the New Testament, instead of quoting what he'd already quoted in the book on the high priests and the Caesars, refers to that book. So you need the three of them.
Right. And he was a German theologian.
Yeah, working away while the Russians were invading in 1945. In fact, I think that's when his book Jesus and History was written.
Mm. And do you know, like, as far as what sort of school of theologian he was from Germany? Like, was he a liberal theologian, or his focus was
No,
more on historical?
he was conservative, and very, very interesting. The way he we're talking about Ethelbert, not about Jesus, but anyway, his he came at the end of all of those histories of Jesus, and it was that kind of thinking about writing a biography of Jesus that showed that he was just an ordinary man. The last one or the one who shattered that was the German who went as a mystery. I mean, as a doctor to Belgium. What was his name? I can't remember. But anyway, he published a book around about the start of the 1900s, where he showed that the biography was always biased by the conclusions that those authors, those scholars had already come to, which was that Jesus was an ordinary man and that his disciples had thought up these marvelous things about him. But Stauffer turned it on, or took up what I think was it Strauss, Dr. Can't remember his name, but anyway, he took up that book from the start of the 1900s and turned that thought against the liberal theologians, New Testament scholars, and he said, all right, take it for granted that you are biased, and take it for granted that the writers of the New Testament were biased, obviously biased in different directions.
Yeah.
What we really need is not your interpretation of Jesus or even the early Christians' interpretation of Jesus. We've got to find out Jesus' interpretation of Jesus. Who did he think he was? And he said, well, here's a way to find out. If both the Christian writers who were biased to make Jesus God and the liberal writers of the 1900s, 19th century, were biased to make him just a man, well, that means that both the Christians and these critics agreed on the fact that that both of them mention one interpreting it as simply that Jesus is a man who was glorified, and the others taking that Jesus really was somebody who should be glorified because that was true. So can you see how that both of them give an interpretation of Jesus, then that is a fact. and then he gets his own understanding of Jesus' self-interpretation by comparing the different things that each one has claimed about Jesus. Anyway, it just it's marvelous. And who was it? I can't remember who. One of the modern, fairly modern evangelical writers. No, I can't remember his name. It's either somebody like Stott or Tom Wright, or anyway, somebody up to date. I saw one time that he quoted Stauffer and said nobody has ever refuted that book, Jesus and History, that its case was so compelling that no liberal scholar anyway, had tried to show that Stauffer was wrong.
Wow.
There you go.
There you go. I mean, I suppose the other thing that I find sort of unbelievable with the whole disciples making up the story is I just can't picture them doing it. Like, can you imagine them sitting around saying, let's start to create this legend that Jesus was really raised from the dead. We're going to live a pretty hard life because of that. And we're going to have to keep saying it. And we're going to be put to death for it. It just doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, we have the reality. The church grew. We know the church existed. The church spread. The church had a powerful influence in that early world. Somehow you got to go from Jesus to that. What seems most likely.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another conversation.
There's a book that Rosita found and asked me to read it for her. Told her it doesn't work, but she just wanted to know my opinion. But it's by T.R. Glover, Professor of History at Cambridge, after half a life as a missionary in India. But it makes a very, very strong case for the reality of the church and its influence through the 2,000 years of its existence, in spite of all the scandal and immorality and power plays and hypocrisies and everything else. Yet it's done such a great thing in the world that it has to be taken seriously, which he begins to do in that book. I've only read half it so far.
All right. So in summary, we've got the star appears in 7 BC. Jesus was potentially born around 5 BC. Herod dies in 4 BC. We think that the Magi probably prepared and headed off 6 to 5 BC, came and visited Jesus, gave him the gifts. They were the gifts for a king, a priest. What's the myrrh for?
Myrrh is what was used as a scent, but also for embalming bodies. Remember in John chapter 12, yeah, when Jesus arrived at Bethany and Mary poured out a vial of myrrh on Jesus, and the disciples were upset, saying, "Hey, that's a lot of money being wasted." And Jesus, hey, that says something about the disciples, doesn't it? The jolly the Magi were who came to see the baby were even more devoted than the disciples.
Yeah.
Just that really is, it sums up the weirdness of human beings.
Yeah.
Amazing. Anyway, it was used to embalm bodies and taken very seriously.
Yeah.
So those three things, recognizing Jesus as king, recognizing him as high priest, and recognizing him as, well, death being very, very important to both his kingship and his high priesthood,
Yeah.
because he had to die. And yeah, so the Magi, I mean, they didn't just choose those gifts at random. They chose them because they were significant to their understanding of what the star meant.
Yeah.
The more I think about it, there's more in that story to get your heart excited than is usually taken when you see the picky with all the myths of the three of them and what their names were.
You think this is probably like
Could have been
someone
a
like,
dozen.
yeah, I was just thinking someone like Paul, who is sitting there saying that God's invisible qualities have been known to man, for all history.
I
You
like
look at,
that bit. There's open to the eye of reason in the things
yeah,
that he has made. Yep.
you've got these people who are from outside the Jewish revelation who have looked at the signs, pieced it all together, and then are so devoted to that that they're willing to spend a lot of effort, time, money, resources to come and honor what they've seen written in the stars, and obviously
Yeah.
thought a lot about it.
I expect to meet them soon. Lucas, I'm sure
Mm,
they're in heaven.
mm,
Even if they believed in astrology and
mm,
magic and so on.
mm.
Uh, Actually, it's interesting to compare. We're running out of time, I suppose, but it's just to compare the responses to the birth of Jesus that we've read already. Well, we
Mm.
didn't read the bit about Herod going off and killing every child who was under 2 years old,
Yeah,
really determined not to let this child be a threat to his kingdom, even though he was a sick old man. Ah, to take a step like that. Well, actually, it was consistent because with, like, he murdered his own wife and her mother and her brother and killed three of his own sons because they were threats to his power. So
yeah,
he was a ruthless man. But anyway, his response is just protect himself, protect his power, protect his wealth. Uh, and
mm,
he was obviously threatened by Jesus. And I think there are a lot of people like that here now who won't even think about Jesus because they are too much committed to this world and to what they have achieved and what they hold in this world. I can't help but think of where Jesus said to the Greeks in the temple, just at the end of his life, he said, if anyone wants to be my servant, he has to hate himself in this world. But the man who, no, sorry, that's no, the way he put it was, the man who loves himself is lost, but he who hates himself in this world will be kept safe for eternal life. And yeah, that's the opposite of Herod. Then there are the high priests and the lawyers. It says everybody in Jerusalem was disturbed when the Magi turned up, because Herod was disturbed because he was so unpredictable. And yeah, they were scared. And you can imagine that the scholars would be very, very cautious about looking for the answer to Herod's question. Where is this marvelous child going to be born? And they turn up this I think it's in Jeremiah 31. It is this passage, I think.
Oh,
No,
about
Micah 5:2. That's right. And you would have thought their scholars, their priests, they would have taken notice of the effort that the Magi had made and their explanation of the star, all that had motivated them to make this journey. And it seems like they were just indifferent to this coming of the Magi from the east to worship this baby that was born. I suppose they're trying to be detached, but I think more than likely they're unconcerned. They wanted life to go on as normal, and they didn't want the whole system of things to be changed. They adapted to the Roman rule and the kingship of Herod, and had one little space for themselves, respect, a life that was easy, and they just didn't want to make the effort. Shame on them. And then, of course, through the Magi, and I've just grown and grown in my admiration of them and appreciation for this story that Matthew put there. It's so much more than just a pretty pic for a Christmas card.
yeah. And then just to finish it off, I guess they are warned in a dream. They've given their gifts. They've worshipped him. I was sort of, the thing that I was wondering and imagining was they've obviously been very faithful to this vision that they've been given and the star and everything like that. And
yes,
then they come before Jesus, but yeah, here they are. It's just an ordinary child in probably a lower to middle class house in Bethlehem, where his father's probably pretty obvious coming to the home that the father's a carpenter, and yet they faithfully worship the child and give the gifts. It just seems a bit incongruous.
Well, I guess they're the peculiar things that make the story so seem so real. I mean, they had come to the conclusion about who this baby was, and to actually come worship could mean just show respect, but even to show respect, they had come to a conclusion about Jesus from the stars. Good grief. And
And that final star
it,
must have been pretty convincing.
it was their whole theology in the background as well. The idea that the gods would communicate to the human race, and they would do it in the stars. But they really believed it enough to make these gifts and to travel as far as they did. And I haven't got it. I can't. In my mind, my picture is: was it a dozen of them, or was it just two of them? There's no more detail about them except simply that they believed and that they made the effort to follow through on their belief and the discoveries that they had made. And if only more people would do that, if only Herod had done it, or the priests and the lawyers, if only they done it, if only more people today would simply open their minds, look at the facts and what has been revealed by God, the history of Israel in the Old Testament, the Christians' interpretation of Jesus in the New Testament, if only they would look at the facts and respond to them. The Magi have become greater and greater in my estimation as I've thought through this chapter of Matthew.
Thanks, Laurie. That was great. Really enjoyed it.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed it very much too. Thank you,
We'll
Lucas.
pick up from verse 15, chapter 2. Was it verse 13? Chapter 2, yeah.
Okay.
Next
Their
week.
trip down to Egypt.
Yeah.
All right. Pleasure. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
Laurie. See you soon. Bye.
See you later.